Boom, we're in. Welcome back, guys, to the Construction Entrepreneur Podcast. Today's episode is all about leverage, and leverage is a dominant force in moving a business forward. And obviously, the more leverage you've got, the easier business is going to be, the more opportunities you're going to have. Everything is a lot easier when you deploy leverage. So I've got 7 different types of leverage in this episode. And you've got to think about leverage on the basic form first before we kick in of, you try undoing a screw without a screwdriver. It's impossible. It is impossible. You will cut your fingers dry trying to undo a screw. But you have a simple screwdriver, so easy to unscrew. Equally, digging a hole, you can do it manual labour, you can do it with your hands, or you can do it with a spade. But get a digger in, more leverage, more force, so much easier to dig that hole. And those lessons apply to business as well. It's the same stuff. So anyone in construction, you understand the physicalities of doing practical work. Now let's apply that to business and actually use leverage in the smartest possible way to grow a business that you really want, and one that's going to provide you everything you actually want from that business. So if you don't have leverage in your business and your life's going to be really difficult. Business is going to be very, very tough. If it's all reliant on you, brute force, just that physicality, no leverage applied whatsoever, life is not going to be that enjoyable. Business is going to be that enjoyable. Business is not going to flourish. You're not going to get to where you want to get to. But if you employ and deploy these leverage opportunities that I've got and the 7 different types of leverage that I've got in this podcast, business gets so much easier because you've got a clearer mind and you understand the principles of applying leverage. And you just think about it. If you're trying to, it's that classic, undoing a tight nut. You've all seen it. You've got a tiny ratchet in your hand, but you put a scaffold pole on that ratchet and you need 10% of the force to undo that nut. And sometimes it feels like in business you can be stuck on a particular stage of the business. You can get stuck typically on the recruitment stage very early on, getting the right subcontractors, getting the right people on board. You can then struggle mentally with the financials of the business, and actually then the marketing of the business, and then developing the sort of senior team in the business. There's all different challenges you're going to come across, and the more leverage that you deploy, the easier those challenges are going to be to sort of get through, basically, and just solve those problems and then move on to the next problem. So 7 different types of leverage. 7. The very first one is people. Like the very easiest first thing to get your head around is people. So you employ people on a day rate, you employ subcontractors at a set price, and they do a job. And it's clear as day as that. It's the easiest form of leverage that goes back to the Egyptians, the Romans. They used leverage to build their empires. Because it's all that was available. It was just loads and loads of workforce, throw bodies at it, and we will build the empire from manual basic labour. Everyone can get their head around that. But you want to be doing that in the right way, of being the right middleman, of you not doing the labour yourself. Because once you're doing the labour yourself, you are just literally a working pair of hands. You've got no leverage on that whatsoever, other than the day rate money you're going to be getting, or the price that you agreed with a customer. So the quicker you get into people doing the work for you, you've then got that leverage. And obviously you want the right contractors, you want the right lads, you want the right subbies, and then you can really employ that leverage. Because I think where a lot of people go wrong is they get subbies in or they get people in, and you end up having to manage them just as much as it would be to actually do the work yourself. And obviously that's the wrong people to leverage. So you've got to find the right people, which is an art, it is a challenge, it's difficult in this industry. But you have to go through a few bad eggs to get to the good eggs. And when you find them, those people don't need management. You need to set them up and basically talk them through the job. But you need the right level of labour on this first level of leverage, that people actually just get on with it. They know what they're doing, they're good at what they do a great job, they clean up after themselves, they tidy up, and they're respectful, they're decent, they hold themselves well in front of the client. You don't need to hide them away from clients, and we've all been there, had to do that with certain people. You don't want clients interacting with some of the labour you've got. But you've got to get that labour right first, and that's the first form of solid leverage on a business, because then you're off and you're away from it and you're running the business. You're managing the jobs as opposed to running and doing the jobs. You want to be managing them and running them. Step 1. Step 2 is cash, because once you've conquered that bit, you start racking up profits in a business. So you then want to leverage that cash to be able to do more. And that's whether that's buying assets, whether it's buying plant, whether it's buying machinery, whether it's spending more money on marketing. It might be your SEO, it might be your website, it might be Instagram, might be YouTube, might be Google SEO and pay-per-click. all these different methods that you can use to get more clients in the business, and you're just leveraging the cash, because cash just sat in the bank isn't doing anything. And in fact, at the moment, with the high rates of inflation, that cash is worth less every year. If you've got 100 grand sat in a bank account, it's reported that inflation is 7-8%. It's probably more than that. You notice yourself how much things have gone up. To go out now for a meal has gone up massively. Energy bills have gone up massively. Travel has gone up massively. Petrol's gone up massively. Cars have gone up massively. Houses have. So you can work out yourself where the actual inflation rate is. And it's probably a lot more than 7 or 8%. It's probably more like 10, 15, 20% in certain industries. But the 7% is probably just an average of what it's gone up. So my point is, cash just sitting there isn't doing anything. And yes, it doesn't mean go and spend all your cash. That's not what I'm saying whatsoever. You need cash in a business to run it from an operational point of view. You also need cash to protect you. So you've got options if something happens, something wrong goes happen. But my point is, there's no point having more cash than what you need sitting there when you could be growing the business or deploying that cash and applying leverage to that cash to get you more opportunities and doing a hell of a lot more. So it's all going to be about, right, what's the smartest place to spend your money on. And in a business, the worst thing we do with money is actually take it out of the business, because obviously you're going to be paying the highest amount of tax on it. But if you apply the leverage and you reinvest back into the business, so like marketing to get you more customers, maybe it's better teams in the office to actually speed up and deliver a better service to your customers, you want to be thinking with that in mind, of actually reinvesting that cash back in and using that cash so that you can leverage it, and it's doing it quicker. Because once you've got cash, it's quicker than just you doing it. Doing manual work, cash can apply speed, which is a great form of leverage on the business as a whole. The next one, number 3, third form of leverage, technology. Technology is available everywhere now for cheap. It's so cheap to have simple systems plugged in. Some of them are simple apps that you can deploy into the business, such as CRM systems, or just processes and invoicing systems and all these different bits that are very, very cheap. Don't cost you absolutely anything, but the speed, the time, the money that it saves, you want to be employing decent systems within the business. And I think within a construction business, you want a really nice, solid, decent pricing system. That's first and foremost. You want a nice, solid system that allows you to track costs on the jobs, a nice, solid system that allows you to invoice jobs very quickly, and also actually chases up on those invoices automatically if they're not paid as well. There's loads of systems out there that do that type of stuff. That just takes all the headache away and all the hassle of just having to do that manually and think about things. You want to be leveraging technology as best as you can. And obviously from a marketing point of view of getting customers, we are in an age where you are unlimitedly connected to everyone. Your website, people can stumble across, they can Google for what they're looking for in your area. They can Google and you pop up. A website is a fantastic piece of technology to leverage, but you also need people visiting that website. It's no good just having a website there. You need the SEO, you need the pay-per-click, and you need links going to that website so that people actually go on it. Because a lot of people have got really good websites, but there's no traffic to them. So you need to solve that problem with technology and use that to your advantage. And obviously social media, it's free, it's available, it's there to be used and to be leveraged, because you can talk to a lot of people in one hit. If you take just this podcast alone, for example, very, very small, I would not give this podcast the credit of, it's a decent podcast. It's a podcast specifically for construction industry. Me just talking about what I know, it is nowhere near the big boys. You've got Joe Rogans, you've got all sorts of people that have millions and millions of viewers and listeners every day. They've absolutely hammered the mainstream. But just strip it back to this tiny little podcast. Little perspective. This podcast is currently at just under 4,000 downloads. Now, nothing massive in the podcast world, but 4,000 people, put them in a room. That's a lot of people. It's a hell of a lot of people. And it gets diluted. I think a lot of people get put off with this, especially with social media, YouTube, things like this podcast as my example. You get put off that only a few hundred people watch it, or a couple of hundred people watch it, or download it, or listen to it. But you've got to think about how many customers you actually need. And leveraging technology is the easiest way of getting those customers, because let's say you need 50 customers a year in your business. Work out, and maybe do this as you're listening along to this. How many customers do you need to actually hit your target every year for the financial target of your business? How many customers do you need? And I bet it's not a lot. A lot of you will be repeat business as well. It might even be under sub 10 customers throughout the year, especially if you're doing bigger jobs. Might be 20, might be 30, might be 40, maybe 50 customers. But if you do 50 people, if there's a few hundred people watching stuff, and 10% of those turn into a customer, maybe not now, but maybe later on down the line, The numbers are on your side, and technology allows you to do that. Again, with this podcast, if I had to sit down and get 4,000 people in a room, it'd be impossible. Wouldn't be able to do it. It just wouldn't be. It's not feasible. But to record a podcast, upload it, put it out, and people download it and listen to it, and it's there forever as well. So the downloads always keep going up. People can find me, learn about me, and we might end up doing a business deal together later on down the line. You just don't know. And this is what you want, the mindset for you guys for your business. It might feel that you're putting a YouTube video out, for example, about what you do and how you do it and why you do it. It's great marketing. It's the best marketing you can get in this day and age. And yeah, you're probably going to upload it and 7 people might watch it in the first week. 30 people might watch it the second week. A year down the line, you might have had 500 people that have watched that, and 1 customer has resulted in paying you and putting money in the till. And that's the thing, is you're thinking longer term leverage, because once it's there, it's sat there. And that's why you want to really create evergreen content when it comes to marketing of stuff that just doesn't change. So like, for example, if you're a house builder, you want to be just going through and documenting the whole process of how you set out, how you do groundworks, how you do brickwork, why you do it in a particular way. Then what happens when you put the roof on, when you put the floors in, when you do the finishing stage, why you do things in a particular way for a really good finish. You can apply that to anything that you guys do. So whether you're listening to this, you're an electrician, whether you're a plumbing business, explaining why you do things and recording it and documenting it and doing it in a really good, easy way that customers are really going to get value and benefit from, it's the easiest form of leverage for your marketing that you can absolutely possibly imagine. But you've got to think long term. You are not going to post one video up on YouTube and the whole world's going to change and you have 30 customers come through your door tomorrow. It's not like that. You've got to think long term, and the best business owners think long term, and that's the way you want to look at it. Number 4, leverage is brain power. Now this is the thing of realizing your limitations and your understanding and your knowledge as a business owner. You are going to reach points where maybe the business gets a bit above you and a bit beyond you, and it's totally normal. I've been there myself, and you get to points and positions and you go, I don't really know what I'm doing with this, because if you've never done it before, why would you? And it's every day is a learning day, and every day is a school day in business, and things will come out of nowhere and situations and problems you've got to deal with that you've never dealt with before. And whether that's a customer dispute, whether that's an employee dispute, maybe whether that's a job going wrong, whether that's a job that hasn't paid you. There's a million different things that can come out of absolutely nowhere. Normally when things are going really good and you just get absolutely hoodwinked by something comes up, a lot of times you're not going to have the brain power and the capacity to handle that and deal with that. You're not going to have the knowledge, the expertise to deal with that, so you have to draft people in as experts. And obviously in this industry, there's certain types of expertise that maybe you're not gifted with. Number 1 is going to be the commercial side of the business. A lot of the times people start physically in the construction industry by the very first layer of leverage that we talked about, by doing the physical labour job, doing it, so you understand the process and how to deliver the job. But the business side, the commercial side, the numbers side, the financial side, strategic growth, and actually running a decent business. And a lot of people do this. I speak to a lot of business owners. They've got to a point where they're running a multi-million-pound company, and you're almost thinking, what the fuck do I do next? Like, how do I manage all of this? Because it's a lot. It's a lot to take on, from being someone on your own, maybe with a couple of guys, and just getting paid cash, or getting paid a very simple invoice. That's my money, that's your money, job done. Whereas when you're pricing and tendering a lot of jobs, some of those jobs might be costing you money to tender. Some of those jobs might end up having longer payment terms depending on the clientele that you go with. You've got to think about a million different things. And a lot of times people aren't tracking costs on jobs. They don't know where they are with each job. They don't know where they are with the profit and loss of the business. They're not even doing a profit and loss meeting, and that's a new skill set to bring in. And it's just evolvement, and this is where it all comes in, this layer of leverage, is you've got to bring in brains to actually show you and to learn from. And this is what I've done throughout my journey, is learn from very clever people. Finance directors, commercial directors, accountants, QSs, estimators, other business owners that have done it, and ahead of me, older than me, done the journey, and you can actually have really good information. And that's leveraging brains. And there's nothing wrong with leveraging other people's knowledge and their brains, because you don't have that information yet. And you've just got to be a learner the whole time. As a business owner, you've got to be in the mode of no ego, willing to learn, happy to learn, and get information from valuable sources. And I think that's the most important thing, is listening to the right people. and getting information from people that have trodden the path and done it and got the experience, and you can verify that and back that up. That's the most important thing. But brains is a massive form of leverage, because think about it. If you know undoubtedly the way to do something, your confidence level is just through the roof, and you've got those balls there because you know what you're doing, because you spoke to someone who's done it and you've got that information. Whereas when you don't know, when you haven't got the brains at the table and you're guessing, you're going to be in a state of worrying about jobs, worrying about the business, worrying about cash flow, worrying about where you're going next, worrying about how you grow it next. All these different bits. Bring brains to the table and it just solves all that problem. It just like that. In a heartbeat, you go, what do we do? Bang, this, done. And you're off. It's a fantastic form of leverage. It's probably the best, smartest one to use. Just leverage other people that know what they're doing. Next, number 5 is leveraging good debt. Now, debt gets a bad name. Everyone consumes debt as a bad thing, especially in the UK. It's a very, stereotypically, 20, 30 years ago, everyone wanted to buy everything outright and pay for it outright. And that was a mentality that was the way to do things. Mortgages are actually quite a relatively new thing. I don't think they came out until like the 60s, something like that. It's quite a new thing. But a mortgage is a leveraged debt, so it allows you to buy an asset that goes up in value, and you're basically leveraging debt from the bank. Don't get me wrong, the banks are making their fantastic money from the mortgage, but without that leverage of that debt in the middle, you wouldn't be able to buy the house that you want. Typically the average home in the UK is now £300,000. Most people are struggling to save up a 5% deposit these days for a 300 grand house, let alone pay 300 grand lock stock to buy a house done from day one. It's impossible for the mainstream, and it's impossible to business to work like that as well. You just can't buy everything cash, because if you run out of cash flow, the business is done. So leveraging good debt on the right things, and what I mean by that is good debt is leveraging a debt or a finance agreement into a business proposal or an asset that produces more cash flow, that it makes the debt viable. That is a fantastic leverage of good debt. Obviously, bad debt is getting debt on stuff like consumables, stuff that you want, shiny stuff that's actually losing you money, so it's depreciating an asset, doesn't generate any cash, and the value of that asset is going down as well. So it's just a triple threat no of not to do, and consumer debt, credit card debt, that's not the debt we're talking about. We're talking about very good debt, raising good debt in a business that allows you to do more. Now, obviously, in the construction industry, there's a couple of different ways of doing that. It might be property. It might be that your business is making really good net profits at the end of the year. You've got cash sitting there. What do you do with it? Buying property is a nice, simple, dead straight, easy store of money. You put a deposit into a property. Like I say, you raise a commercial loan or mortgage on that property, and you service the debt. Tenants service the debt for you, and you've got an asset going up in value, and you might also make some middle money on the difference between the rent or the lease versus the actual mortgage and commercial loan costs that are in the middle there. So that's a fantastic way of doing that. Obviously, there is plant. A lot of people, you want to be buying certain tools, vans, plant and machinery, depending on what you do, that allows you to speed up the process of what you do, allows you to do a better job. And I think where a lot of people go wrong with this is that you rush out to buy new plant, machinery and vans before you really need to. And any decision like that's always got to come back to a business decision, because it's the easiest thing in the world to convince yourself that you need the best machinery, you need the best plant, you need the best this and the kit, because you want it, because you're attracted to it and you want it. But from a business point of view, you've always got to look at it and go, well, if we buy that new van, what's that going to allow us to do? Is it going to be cheaper in the long run than an older van because it's maintenance issues, reliability issues? Does it make more commercial sense to buy a bit of plant because you're always hiring a bit of plant now, and you're servicing a higher company and they're earning their money on it, and you might be better off buying your own? All different ways of looking at it, but again, it comes back to that commercial strength and that financial strength of going, right, what's the best financial decision to raise good debt that actually is going to pay back for us in the long run? And that's the way to look at it. But once you do that, good debt allows you to multiply massively. Because let me finish that example off with, let's say you buy a commercial premises, a building that is the office for your company, and you put a deposit into that property, you then raise a commercial debt, you can then lease that unit back to the business, you can own it personally. There's different ways of doing it depending on your tax position, and obviously speak to your accountant about doing stuff like this. But then the business is servicing the debt on the loan, which is a fixed cost. If you were going to just hire somewhere anyway, you'd be paying that cost. So you may as well pay that cost to you as a business owner. But then that asset is going up in value over time. So yes, you've created good debt at the bottom on the property, on the asset, but because the value is going up on a property, most of the times the property in the UK, certainly residential, is tend to double every 12 to 15 years. It goes up and down, things move, recessions happen at different times, but that is the average when you track back hundreds of years. That is the rate of inflation of property prices. So whereas the debt is fixed, if you buy somewhere that's, like I say, 300 grand, and you've got, let's say, a commercial debt on there of 200 grand, that property then becomes worth 600 grand, your debt is still 200. So it's all your money for the taking. It's all your money. So it's a fantastic use of commercial debt. So think about using debt in the right way. And this is what people do with businesses, when they restructure businesses. You might have heard stories that people buy businesses for £1 because they're in the insolvency stage, and they're literally taking on all of the risk and the debt, and they go in and restructure the business. They strip off the stuff that's not needed, change around the business and get the business profitable again. And you bought an asset, but there was a debt to begin with for £1, and you re-engineered that business to make it profitable. So you took on the debt and the risk in the beginning, but then you've actually turned it into a profitable machine, which is something I'm really interested in looking at heavily doing next year. So different ways of thinking about it, but good debt is a really good thing. Number 6, brand, business and personal. And I put up about this on my stories last week, and saying that personal brand beats company brand. And you've got to think about what a brand does, and think about the brands that you buy, the brands that you like, depending on, that could be a certain car manufacturer. You might like Mercedes, for example. You might like a Ferrari over a Lamborghini. You might like a Rolls Royce. The reason you like that brand is because of their brand. They built an image and a persona and a reputation of owning that product. Same with watches, same with a certain type of house, certain restaurants you want to go to, you want to be seen in, you want to go to experience, because they built a brand. And people follow that brand. And if you look at the bigger brands such as Virgin, Tesla, what these guys have done, Richard Branson's created a massive personal brand. Elon Musk has created a massive personal brand. And that's something to leverage, because if you were going to have a meeting with Elon Musk tomorrow, you would pretty much do whatever Elon Musk said, because he's Elon Musk. He's built his brand and his reputation around what he's doing, and he's got that image around it. If you didn't know Elon Musk, and he walked into a room and started negotiating with you, trying to maybe buy your business, you wouldn't give him the time of day because you don't know who he is. So the brand power is fantastic in the terms of negotiation, positioning, and status. There is an element of status when certain people walk in a room. You're going to listen to them more because they've got a personal brand or they've got a company brand. If you know someone owns a certain company, you imagine if you were sat in a restaurant and Richard Branson sat next to you at the table, you would instantly want to speak to that guy because he's got a massive personal and company brand. But if you actually look at his brand, the Virgin followers and the online presence is a lot smaller than his own personal brand. And he's done the two very cleverly. And you'll notice whenever Richard launches a new business, he puts his face all over it. When he launched Virgin Atlantic, he dressed up as an air hostess and got all the PR and the press from that of being dressed up as a woman with lipstick on, and got his name out there and got his face out there because he's first and foremost at the front of the brand. And it just creates massive leverage opportunities, because when you're going to negotiate, if you've got a brand, if people know who you are, they like you, they trust you, they're going to buy from you and do more business with you, and it's going to open up doors that won't be there if you're just not known. If no one knows you as a business owner, if no one knows your company, why would anyone do business with you? It's simple facts, and a law of just human association. People want to do business with people that they know, like, and trust. And this is why the influencer scene has just killed it. The last 5-10 years, people go on a shitty celebrity program, but they come out and brands want to get hold of them because they've got personal brand power and influence to use and put their products in front of millions of people and sell a lot more products and do a lot more revenue. And this is the way you want to be thinking with your business. A brand is something to be leveraged. You want to be building your own company brand, your own personal brand within the market that you're in and in front of the clientele that you want. And you don't need to be massively famous. I'm not saying that whatsoever. You don't need to be an influencer. I'm not talking about doing fucking TikToks, dancing like a twat. I'm talking about being known in your industry in front of the right people, in front of the right market and the clientele that you want, and being famous to a few. And that's my reason for doing this, the Construction Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm positioning myself, full transparency, as a figurehead of the construction industry, of business, doing deals and developments, all different types of bits. I want to be at the front and the foremost of that industry. It's the industry I love, it's the industry I've been in my whole life, and now I'm just creating that personal brand of mine of being known within the industry. And that's what you want to do with yours. There will be certain clientele that you want to be famous to. You want to put your face in front of them, you want to put your company in front of them, leverage your personal brand, your business brand, and I guarantee you will have more opportunities that you know what to do with. And it's a huge unlock of leverage. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, but it's the one that will pay you the most over the longer term. And then number 7 is leveraging your own unique experiences and specific knowledge. If you do something for a long time, you will gain knowledge and insights into stuff that a lot of people won't have. If you've been in an industry for 20 years, you're just going to know some shit that people won't know if they've been in it 2 years. And that's an advantage to leverage. That is an advantage to know that just experience and time in the game is something that you just get as you do it. The more and more you do it, and it's like, I'll give you an example. This weekend I went to speak to my accountant about a deal that I'm doing, and for me it's a bit more complicated because it's a bit more tricky of what I've done before. But for him, it's easy. So I talk about it and he goes, yep, and almost sort of dismisses what I'm saying, but it's because it's second nature to him, because he knows what he's saying. So it actually falls back in line with what I said earlier of leverage number 4, brains, power of knowing what you're doing. And this is what you want as well. You want to be in a position where you really know your industry, you really know your craft, you really know your trade, you really know what your business does because you've done it for a long time. And this is something that you can only get by doing it, from being in it from a time. So someone listening to this, you're fairly new to business, the longer you stay in this business vehicle and you become an expert at it, you become really fucking good at it, that is a leverage power to have. Because when you're doing deals later on, you're going to know certain things and little tricks. And sometimes what I've found is there's things that I remember from years and years ago and they've come to play now. And you go, I know how to do that. I know someone who does that. And it's that leverage of your experience, your network, your power, your connections. And this is why I'm a big, massive fan of build relationships wherever you can. Be good to people wherever you can, because you just never know when you might need someone, or someone might slot into place when you've met them before, or they've done something for you before, you've done something for them before. And that is just a massive leverage. Is that black book catalogue, people you know, people that you've done business with, and just stuff you've learned and stuff you've done wrong. It's a massive thing to leverage. So the reason I put this point in is for any of you guys listening to this, maybe you're going through a bit of tough time, maybe you're going through a bit of challenges. All of those stuff that you're going through now, or you have been through, or stuff that's coming up that you know is going to be a problem, it's all going to pay you later on. It's all going to provide a form of leverage later on, because you've done it and you've conquered it and you've achieved it and you've got through a problem or a situation or something tricky, or you've done something really good. It works both ways, and you understand right what works, what doesn't work. It's all going to add to your greater sense of leverage, putting all of this together, all these 7 points later on, from just actually having the experience and doing stuff. And I think this is the thing with education and knowledge, and the field that I've sort of veered into with this podcast is basically giving you guys information. On one sense, that's fantastic. You need that. I'm a big learner by that. I'm a big fan of mentorship. I'm a big fan of learning from other people. But ultimately, you've got to learn that stuff, and then you've got to go and do it. And then that is what learning is. Like listening and reading is not learning. Like, you've probably done it yourself, where you read a book, and 3 months later you can't remember what that book said because you didn't apply any of it, what it says. So you've got to listen, but then you've got to implement and put it into place. And that's really what's going to be your biggest feedback loop of you developing as a person, as a business owner, whatever way you want to put it, which is going to form part of your leverage. Because there's a lot of know-it-alls out there. There's a lot of people that know what to do but have never actually done what they're saying to do. And one's going to be much more beneficial because you learn the nitty-gritty, you learn the details, the bits, when you're actually doing it and got your feet in the field and you're in the arena doing it. So that's my biggest thing. So that is 7 different forms of leverage. I think it'd be really good for you guys to actually tick off which ones you are good at now, which ones you're deploying, and which ones you're not. And the more leverage you put into a business, the more leverage you apply to everything that you do, the stronger, better position you're going to be later on, and because you've got higher leverage activities being done within the business. So I hope that's been useful, guys. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please let me know. Please share it on social media, add it to your stories on Instagram, take a screenshot and let me know, tag me in it, and I'll share it back. It's just good to hear from people that are listening to it and feedback. I get a lot of messages every day now, pretty much, of people saying certain things, how they like it, and it's really just good to hear. So please do that, and I'll see you on the next one.